Hello, here we are on to our 39th episode of the year of being 70, which was an initiative of my childhood and lifelong friend Lucy McCarrer, who is in Norfolk in the UK, and I'm Lisette Schuitenmaker. I'm in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And before turning 70, we turned 60 one day,
We did.
over 10 years ago now.
Amazingly, it was exactly 10 years before we turned 70.
And so today we wanted to look at how are our years between 60 and 65. Maybe you were also there in that age bracket. Maybe you've passed it and maybe you go like, wow, 60 is a long way away. I'll be completely over the hill. And what do people do? What do women do when they're 60? So I'm really curious what you were doing when you were 60, Lucy.
Well, I was running my publishing company, Rethink Press, and we had started it. When did we start it? So that was in 2004. Yes, we started it in 2011. So it had started, kind of small, and it was growing. But by the time I was 60, it had really taken off. So we were very busy. And we had also gone into partnership with a bigger company, and I was also mentoring this big entrepreneur accelerator program, as it's called the Key Person of Influence program. And I think I had just recently become what's called the Publish Mentor. So it was, well, obviously it was well before COVID. So in person, about 3 times a year, I was in a room full of 60 entrepreneurs who wanted to spend the day with me while I told them how to write a book, which which was something. So that was a format, a masterclass that I developed, and it was really, really, it was very engaging and inspiring for me as well as for them. They were all fantastic at what they did, but they were not necessarily, most of them, not professional writers, had never written a book before, didn't know if they could write a book. So my job was to create a pathway for them, a program which showed them that they could write books, and that it wasn't that difficult, and they were, they had all the content they needed, and just, to put it in step-by-step phases. So that was what I was doing, as well as, with my business partner, co-founder Joe, running the publishing company.
Yeah.
That was growing, and of course the people I mentored then came to us and published. So it was all a wonderful sort of self.
Yeah, looks like, everything
Yeah,
fit together.
it was an
And
exciting time.
it also sounds very busy.
It was very busy. Yes, yes. And I also had, two teenage girls. And it was a time when they
How
started.
did you do it?
I don't really, I think I'm very good at, I've become very good, and maybe it's a lifetime thing of being able to swap between tasks very quickly. So I know for some people that, they really need to focus on something and it takes them time to get into, and then they don't want to be disturbed while they're doing it. And then when they get out of it, it takes them time to get back into doing that thing. I'm actually really good, and I don't know whether that's just something that's natural to me or something I've had to develop because of the way I've lived, at just jumping between things and being straight back into something, being able to spend a short time on it or a long time on it. And also, what I do is I tell my subconscious to work on things when I'm doing other things. So I think that's how I do it, but it's hard to say really. But what about you? What were you doing?
Yeah, let's come back to the subconscious later. But what was I doing? When I was 39, I went to see an astrologer. He was actually a friend. He was part of the first kind of world reform idealistic group that I was in. And he said to me, um, first he wanted to check, did I give the right timing of my birth? And he said, when you were 6, you were standing with your back against a wall. Did I ever tell you this story?
No, no.
He he told me, and it still moves me. When you were 6, you were standing with your back against a wall, and my the tears just jumped out of my eyes because I went to this Montessori kindergarten where it was very lovely and sweet, and you could, you played with the people who wanted to play what you wanted to play. And then my parents thought this dreamy girl will not, I mean, this is not, she will just remain a dreamy girl. And they put me in a public school, what we call a public school, where along with my brother who was 4, so he was in kindergarten there, and he kind of ran onto the big playground and fought with boys 5 years older than him. So everybody knew who he was. But I had no friends there. I did not know any of the children. And I watched them and I saw what I could later name as power games. So
Wow.
there were like the popular children who determined, the central game area, what was going to be played in the central area. They allowed certain people to play with them, and others were kind of left on the periphery. And I had never come across that before. And I did not know that. And I stood literally with my back against a wall. And so I checked with my mother, and she said she would drive by, when she knew it was playtime, and see me for weeks standing there. And, that's also the moment I think, reconstructing all that, I kind of caved in and gave up the world of fairies and a living universe, and started to adapt. So he just wanted to check my birth moment, and of all the things he could have chosen, he chose that moment and that expression. So I thought, wow, he must really be accurate,
Amazing.
and he is very accurate. And then he said, everything you're doing now is just preparation. When you are 60, you will know what you came to Earth for. And you will have to integrate for 3 years. And then at 63, your real life will start. So it's like,
Wow.
wow, I'm 39. I have all these years ahead of me. And then at 60, a bell will ring and I will know. And of course, it wasn't like that. But
How extraordinary. But that is amazing. And do you feel that that's what happened, that your real life started at 60? Is that how it felt to you?
yeah. And well, it felt to me that, if I trace my history, so at 6, I kind of gave up the spiritual world or the world, the connected world, and came into the individualistic world. And then at 15, I became depressed and I had to work with that until I was about 50. And then for the next 10 years, it was still kind of off and on. And from 60, I feel I am light. I have shed, the psychological things, and I'm just yeah, I feel so much like an entity, like, a
Yeah.
person maybe, but
Yes.
like an entity who can just bring myself to where I go and shine my light, and that's what I do. So yeah,
That's
I feel much better in my own skin, so to say.
Yes, and actually, as you say that, I really feel that that's how I felt at 62, because at 40, my life kind of fell apart and changed because I got divorced, and that meant I had to find a new job and do new work. And I started working as a work-life balance expert, which was because I was not at all an expert, but I very quickly had to become an expert. And well, it was a very new field, so that wasn't
Yeah.
incredibly difficult. But that was 10 years of my life really doing that. Then
So that's 40 to 50.
that's sort of
Yeah.
40 to 50-ish. I mean, maybe 42 to 52, thereabouts. And then things again got difficult for me in my 50s because Richard got ill, and I did my teaching diploma in my mid 50s. And then I met Joe, and we started Rethink Press in my late 50s. And there was a feeling, I suppose, a bit like a kaleidoscope in my head, that all the pieces of my life that I'd been working on before, none of which had ever quite felt like the thing that I was meant for or I wanted to do, they all started falling into place. And I do feel like you, that at 60 something sort of formed that was solid. Everything obviously had its place. All the things I'd learned, all the things that
Yeah.
nothing was wasted.
Yeah.
Everything was useful and had grown me and had created a sort of solidity. And I was able to, I mean, I'd never thought of myself as a salesperson, but I was actually able to go out there and sell publishing, sell Rethink Press to authors. And it wasn't because I was, sort of being, because I was a good marketeer, but because I really believed, I was so kind of passionate about what we were able
Yeah.
to offer and how, how books would change people's lives. That was what I was able to do. And by the time I was 60, Rethink Press had really consolidated. And I remember somebody on my 60th birthday asking me, had I done something special for myself for being 60? And I actually hadn't. But what I was able to say is, through the company, I have been able to buy myself, or lease at least, the first new car, brand new
A
car
car.
I had in my life, and I loved it. I had an Audi, and I'd always bought secondhand cars before. You probably
Yeah.
needed to have cars because you're in a
Yeah,
different.
we should have done a podcast, the year of turning 60, because I think what we have in common is that things that we'd done, I had had my communications agency, and then I'd, studied healing, and I'd been on boards since I was 20, and it all started to come together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And what I was also doing, as well as the actual publishing, was that I had become the publish mentor, so called, of this big entrepreneur accelerator program called the Key Person of Influence program. And I was working with, sort of 60, a group of 60 entrepreneurs 3 times a year, where I was taking them through a process of being able to position and plan and write their books. So
Yeah.
that process was forming. I was working with them. I sort of used to give a masterclass to start them off for a day where they would start planning out their books. And then I would go on, well, they were called webinars in those days. They weren't even Zoom calls, I don't think. But I would come on with, they would come and talk to me every couple of weeks. And so I got an absolute feel of what the process of people writing their first book was like, and where they got stuck, and how I could encourage them and unstick them and take them on to the next stage. And that was so, I enjoyed that so much. And I mean, I still do it to some extent, but that knowledge, that experience was then what I was able to consolidate and take into the app Book Magic. So it was,
Yeah, much later. Yeah.
yeah,
But it's
exactly.
also interesting how, our mothers were friends. We were both eldest daughters. We became friends instantly when we met when we were 8 or 9. And then we both are into books. I wrote my third book, the Het Oudste Effect. We had the Eldest Daughter Day in 2014, and then we wrote a book, my co-author and friend Wies and I translated it into English, and then I wrote childless living, about, the life without children, which 1 in 5, 1 in 4, people have no children. So it was also very, very much about books and about yeah, the experiences and the observations. Like you too, you were observing the
Absolutely.
process of people writing their first book, and then you were writing about that too, weren't you?
Yes, exactly. I mean, I wrote two books I think they're both in my early 60s. I mean, the first one was actually about fiction, and I was
Yeah.
asked to contribute a fiction writing program to a very big writing blog. So every week I would write, 1,000 words on the next step in writing fiction. And then I suddenly realized that I had written, 30, 40,000 words here. And
It's a book.
it's a book, yes. So that was my first book about writing books. And then, having done that, I then wrote the non-fiction version of it. So yes, in sort of between 60 and 65, I wrote my first two books about writing books. So in a way, that sort of early 60s period, I mean, for you and for me, was about consolidating experience
Yeah.
and information into book form. And
Yeah.
I think I mean, I, find it as a book mentor as well. It's just an incredibly creative and developmental thing to do, to be able to put into words
Yeah.
your experience in a way that will then inform and inspire
Yeah.
other people.
And I don't think I was aware of that, that in our, 60s, the first half of our 60s, we would be so productive.
No, I mean it's very nice to look back and see that where where well in the UK for women 60 was the retirement age, the official
Oh,
retirement.
was it?
I'm not sure if it was then, it might have been moved up to 65, but originally men were supposed to retire at 65, but women could retire at 60 in the sort of
Oh, I never knew there was a difference. We never had a difference in that. Why was that?
I don't honestly know. I'm not, I can't think what the thinking behind that was.
No.
That's how it was. I suppose, I don't know, perhaps men were supposed to be more kind of financially
Yeah, so
productive.
instead of retiring, we were kind of reinventing ourselves in
Yes,
a way
yes, exactly, exactly.
at 60. And also, there was another thing that happened to me at age 60, which was I was attuned to, I will use that phrase, to be in the next chair of the board of the Fintorn Foundation,
That's amazing.
which was, I'm saying past time because it hasn't survived COVID, which was an educational charity in the Fintorn community up in Scotland near Inverness, very, very dear to my heart. And I've never lived there. I've never been there longer than 2 weeks. And yet, and this too moves me, that through the process of attunement, which I can talk about as a beautiful process of finding out, who is to wear, as we said, the mantle of the chair next, that came to me, which was a huge honor. And wow, what a ride that was.
In a good way, or I mean, was it good and bad?
Yeah. So let me talk, I'd like to talk about the process of attunement because that is a way of coming to decisions that I had never come across anywhere else. So with the board, so the chair, my friend Robin Alfred, I was like the vice chair, but he was the chair. But we worked together a lot. And for him, it had been, his time had come. And so we sat in a circle and kind of attuned to the overlighting spirit and the life-giving spirit of that organization and and invoked a column of light between us. And then we would just ask, who is the next chair? Can you show us? And so after a while, somebody dinged a ding and we opened our eyes and everybody looked at me. And I too, I had just felt, the mantle come from him and kind of land on me. And everybody looked at me and said, Lisette, it's you. I was like,
That's
whoa, 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 whoa. How? Yeah, it
right.
was a big, big thing because it has been a seminal organization for teaching, co-creation with nature, with the intelligence of nature, listening to your higher self instead of the egoic self, and work as love in action.
So it
So
was
that was
absolutely in
a
tune
huge
with
honor.
everything that you learnt and experienced over your life, really. I mean, it was
Yeah,
like a culmination, really, of
yeah.
doing
So
what.
it's really the little girl at 6 who kind of gave up that world that was all about, it wasn't very aware, it was more intuitive, of course. And then having learned a lot about it and bringing my experience of being a board member, that brought me that. But the foundation was not, financially in a good shape. And so we needed to do something. And also we wanted to kind of make a step into a more self-organizing. It was really a pyramid and everything, all decisions were moved up until there was the chair of management who had, even with working 20 hours a day, she couldn't possibly do everything. So we wanted to move decision power down and reorganize in a way that people could really feel empowered and have a structure. It's called a sociocracy or holacracy, which is a well-defined way of doing that. And then also we wanted, to pay people in management a little bit more. And in the end, that bit us because that was so dear to people that no one would earn more than anyone else.
Oh, right.
And so then the whole thing got hijacked, and
Wow.
I was nominated for 5 years, but I stepped down after four, which later turned out to be a good thing. So there was a chair who actually lived there during the COVID period. It would have been really
Oh,
awful if I had been chair during, but I wouldn't have been. But anyway, yeah, but it was wow. But I also I can't imagine how did I do all that?
yeah. Yeah, no, we both do seem to have taken on a lot in our early 60s. I mean, yes, because I was also, I mean, it's not it's not at all the same as you and the Findhorn Foundation, but I founded the Business Book Awards in 2017. So I was 60, well, 62, going on 63.
When
And
you said, well, let's just start a new thing. Why not?
yes, why not? I mean, I was I mean, I'd thought about Business Book Awards in the past and not found a way to make it work. And then I was approached by this company who put on events and ran other awards and said, "Would you like to front the Business Book Awards because we really want to make this happen?" So I said yes, and it was a lot of work, a lot of extra unpaid work, but it was, of course, a very good platform for me. It was I was able to sort of go out into the business book publishing world and talk about business books. And I mean, the first awards event was in 2018. So I guess I was 63 at that point. And I mean, it happened that, I mean, I thought I'd put together a really kind of equal gender balanced judging panel of great kind of writers, publishers, business people, and put together, excellent kind of categories and made it all very kind of clear. But what happened was that to cut a long story short, at the end of the process of judging the first awards, every single winner, we had 11 winners, 10 categories, and one overall winner. Every single one was a white man. So that wasn't
The daisy, yeah.
that wasn't exactly what I planned. And I thought, well, I can either just sweep it under the carpet and hope we do better next time, or I can go out and make a stand about this. So I did, and that was the next book I wrote, which was called A Book of One's Own. Virginia Woolf wrote A Room of One's Own about women writing more novels. I wrote A Book of One's. Not that I'm comparing myself to Virginia Woolf, but it gave me a whole kind of campaign, if you like, to get more women into book writing, book publishing, book and kind of women in business, really. And I started running women-only book writing programs, which was lovely. And I really loved doing that. And I still have some women-only kind of spaces. And it just created such wonderful circles of friendship and support.
Yeah.
It was a great thing to do. And within a couple of years, we had one of the reasons it had gone that way is because we'd only had half as many entries from women authors in the first Business Book Award.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but they did kind of drop off during the process. But by the third year, we had equal numbers of men and women entering books and getting through to the shortlisting level as well. So we had,
I love this kind of, pride that kind of comes into your face, kind of, whoa, women, you can do it. But you were a catalyst in that.
yes, I'm sure I didn't do it all on my own, but
Oh, no, of course. Let's just, bat off the compliment again. No, but that's wonderful, Lucy, that you
it
saw
was.
something and you acted on it.
Yeah, so by the time I was 65, that was a real achievement, I feel. And I think also for me during that period between 60 and 65, because I was doing the mentoring, but also doing the Business Book Awards, I became much more of a public speaker. And that was a very kind of comfortable place for me to be. I mean, people always, and I'm sure they possibly say it to you as well, sort of think that because I enjoy being out on stages and talking, or it can be online, wherever, but because I enjoy that sort of performative element, people tend to think
Hmm.
I'm a great extrovert, and
Yeah.
I'm not. I don't. It's sort of like it's a safe space for me. It's quite contained, but I really love trying to inspire people, educate people, and
Yeah. And going back to the year being 70, you still do that, don't you?
yeah, yes,
With great success.
yeah. Sometimes, yes, hopefully, yes, no, and I think I've got better at it as well, just through doing it. But yeah, so that was what was kind of, I suppose that was what was happening to me in my early 60s, which may not be, what is generally expected of 60-year-old women, really. So I think both of us have been through, kind of just continued to develop and feel that everything in our lives to that point kind of came
Yeah.
together in a really useful, positive, practical way.
Yes, exactly as my astrologer friend said,
Right, yeah,
everything you're doing is just, prep. We call it vingeroefening. Like, you have to, in order to play the concerto,
yes,
you have to practice your fingers and
yes,
practice and practice and practice. And then
yes.
one point it will come together. And I think you wrote a book of one's own, but we came into our own, really.
Oh, that's true. That's nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes. And I wish, I mean, you had this knowledge, if you like, from when you were 39 because you'd been to this astrologer who told you that. Did you feel that was a really helpful piece of information, that you actually could wait, that it
Well,
made,
I think it helped in times when I wondered what I was doing.
yeah,
Like when I was 40, I'd also, sold my communications firm and I was kind of, who am I now? What now? And I came into these, forward-looking think tanks and groups, and I went to Findhorn, but it was always, yes, I could, yeah, do all this, but yeah, and it was helpful. But also, I had told people because it was, of course, quite a spectacular thing. So people who would ask me, "How old are you now?" "Oh, you're 57." "Oh, the time will almost there."
yeah,
Yeah,
yes. I really wish someone had told me that I needed to wait, that because I really did have periods before that when I thought my life has been complete. I haven't achieved anything. My life has
yeah,
been a mess, and I haven't achieved everything. Given how lucky I was in terms of my kind of birth and education and where I came in and what
yeah,
privilege I've had, definitely had periods where I've thought I've just wasted this.
yeah.
I haven't achieved anything solid or consistent. Why have I, kind of bounced between different careers? Why have I not done
Yeah.
something sort of solid and
And so then the answer came
and
in
then
your early 60s, the
yeah,
answer to why you did this, that, and the other.
yes, yes, yes. I guess it did. I really, like you, I really started to feel at that point kind of like solid in my own skin, like I was a real person with kind of boundaries and knowing who I was and what I was good at and
Yeah.
what I was not so good at,
Yeah,
maybe.
but that's also really, that gives inner peace, right? That at some
Yeah,
point you go like, oh, I'm not that kind of person. I would have liked to be, a more kind of, I don't know, outgoing or easygoing or whatever kind of person, but
yeah,
I'm not. This is my strength. This is who I bring to the table.
yes, yes, exactly. And one of the things I had wanted to be in my early 20s is that I'd really wanted to act. I wanted to but
But you are on stage now in a very different way.
exactly. And I'm probably, yes, exactly. So that whatever skills I had in that sort of area, I have been able to use and enjoy. And
Yeah.
I think I wanted to act when I was younger because what was so appealing about it was that I didn't have to think about who to be or what to say. I could become
Yeah.
a character, and that felt very, that kind of gave, I don't know, I can't really explain it, but I didn't have to worry about who I
Yeah.
was presenting to the world because I could present a pre-formed character and just inhabit it on stage. And I
Yeah.
think that's what I enjoyed. But by the
But
time I
speaking
got,
to groups in a way, you have a
yes, yes,
topic
I
and
have
you
a
know the
role.
topic well, and whatever questions they fire at you, you know that you can, the answer will come. And if not, as a person has asked a really, really good question.
Yes, yes, yes,
And you
exactly.
can come back to them. I mean, there's also that. It's not like you're found out as a fraud all of a sudden.
No, 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 exactly.
Yeah.
But so I knew who I was as a person, so I could be that person. The character was now mine. I didn't have to rely
Yeah.
on a character that had been written by somebody else. I was
Yeah.
actually in a place where I could just perform, if you like, as myself, which
Yeah.
which was nice. But I really wished that I had had somebody, whatever age, who'd said to me, "Wait, it will all come together."
Well,
Because
in a way, we're doing that now, right? We are now doing that. So if you're younger, don't despair. Your
no,
time will come. Things will flow together as they have for both of us.
exactly. And nothing you do is wasted. I'm really, really, I feel that very strongly that even things that you don't enjoy or that you find difficult or kind of go against the grain for you, it's all useful. It's all, I mean, sounds
It's
very
all
old.
life
It's
experience.
all
Yeah.
life experience, it's character forming. And it will come together at some stage where you feel, yep, this is me. This is what I
Yeah.
can do and who I am. And
But the kind of persona thing, one thing I learned from my good friend Eckhart, who died in 2008, is he always sat in conferences and get-togethers, but he always sat on the front row. And so I've made it a habit to do that too. And I pay attention. I pay attention much better when I'm in the front row than when I'm in the back. And when I'm in the back, I turn into the dreamy girl and I kind of dream away and go like, oh, where are they now? In front, I don't have, like, I have a relationship to the speaker. Also, I feel it's helpful for
yeah,
speakers to have people on the front row. Very often those front row seats are empty and you feel like
yes,
you have to reach further as a speaker. And
absolutely.
also, I've trained myself to ask questions because very often, there's the speaker, and then does anybody have a question, and then there's this kind of awkward
Yeah,
silence in the room, and
yeah,
everybody goes like, "Oh no, no, no." But I ask a question that often is very, I feel like, anybody could think of a question like that. And
yeah,
there's such a relief in the room. And so those, as an introvert, I've also taught myself those extroverted, attitudes and ways of being, which I feel I can now inhabit quite easily. And
yeah,
it's joyous. And then I have a relationship to the speaker, and I can come after the talk, I can go up to them and have a chat and not be like the shy girl, in the back who kind of, no one has noticed and has no connection and just,
yeah,
goes off through the back door.
yeah. But also, you're performing a real service for that speaker because no matter how experienced and good you are at speaking, there's always that slight sort of are they
Yeah.
going to like what I say? And as you say, having people in the front row who are concentrating, who are
Yeah.
giving
Kind
you
of nodding.
and energy and giving you
Yeah.
approval makes such a big difference. And as you say, the asking a question at the end, that's such a generous thing to do from audience members. It is
Yeah.
exactly what you need and want, and then it encourages other people to ask questions, and it
Yeah.
makes the whole experience for everybody.
Yeah. And I've learned a lot about asking questions from you, the British, and also from my studies at the Barbara Brennan School, because we're very kind of, we just go in. Often somebody there's a speaker and they would say, well, you said that, but I don't agree because, it's very, very rude. Whereas I've learned to say, wow, that was a really interesting talk. I've picked up a lot that I hadn't quite put together like this. But there's just this one point where I go like, did you really say? And it sounds so much nicer. It starts a conversation. And so now I really notice when people go like the Dutch way and kind of without mentioning their name, without, giving any sort of compliment, they just barge right in.
Well, that's
Yeah.
interesting. I didn't know that was a Dutch characteristic, but I'm glad to hear that the English have some nice characteristics because sometimes you wonder. But yes, maybe manners and politeness is still a kind of
Yeah, but
good.
it's also kindness.
Yes,
A friend of
yes.
mine said, is this not a very English thing that before you say anything, you go, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Right?
I've never heard that before,
You've
but
never heard that. Well, she said she learned that in the UK. Is it true what I'm going to say? Is it kind? And is it necessary? And do have a sharp tongue sometimes, and I do say things that later I go like, oh, why did I have to just, blah, blah, blah. Uh, and then I go, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Well, maybe it was true, but it wasn't very kind. Was it necessary? No, not at all. So that's a really good reflection instrument that I can give back to you as an English person from
yeah.
a Dutch friend who worked in UK for a while and came back with this. Or maybe it wasn't her upbringing. I don't know.
No, that's great. No, that is a very nice. I mean, yes, it is a very nice little mantra to remember.
Yeah.
That's very good. Yes, yes. Well,
Yeah. So 60 to 65. Did you then celebrate 65?
I can't remember, so possibly not. I didn't. I certainly didn't have a big part. I mean, I had a party that you came to when I was 60. I had a lunch party in St James's Park in the restaurant there, which was lovely, and I really enjoyed it. And I like typically of me, I got incredibly nervous beforehand. I didn't really want to have it. I was kind of forced into having it by my mother, who said, "You must have a party. I'm going to give you a party." And I remember standing outside the restaurant before anybody had turned up, feeling really quite sick and thinking, oh, I don't know why. I mean, it's so ridiculous. But, I thought nobody's going to come or the wrong people. It was,
It's all going to be wrong. It is of course, I love when you say these things because I love to go and pry. Why is that kind of little girl who then completely takes over? This is naughty adult Lucy that is then speaking, is kind of this little girl who again feels the strange one at school or,
yes, yes. And
runs kind of,
I don't know where
yeah,
that comes from. I don't have that moment where, my back was against the wall. That's such a,
yeah.
kind of image. But yeah, it happened with my
But then you had a lovely party. At 60, yeah, but 65, I threw a big party when I was 65.
sister.
A friend of mine took me to a rehearsal of a choreographer, and his name happened to be Arno Schuitenmaker.
Oh,
So that's the same surname. Now, my surname is shipbuilder, and of course, being Dutch, there's many of us. When we had phone books, when I had the Amsterdam phone book, that had a whole page of Schuitenmaker. So it's not a rare name. But I went to see this rehearsal in a kind of old industrial building, which was then a center where dance companies that did not have a fixed, place, a fixed theater could rent for rehearsals. And then I thought, wow, this this place is great, and this performance is great. And why don't I ask him or engage him with his company to do a performance here? And then we can have a dinner and then we can have a dance.
how
And
lovely.
uh, yes, and it was wonderful. And people, yeah, I really loved it. And people came from Findhorn too, because I just, stepped back and I still have friends there, but the friendship was very active then. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. And at the performance, my mother was already in a wheelchair. Bless her. She did come. She was in a wheelchair. She was kind of in front of the front row, so to
Yeah,
say. And it so happened that one of the dancers who, I mean, it was an intense dance. He has a specific ballet language that is quite different from the pirouette and the arabesque and the pointed toes and everything. It's very, modern. And
yeah.
in the choreography, one of them was kind of I don't know, for minutes on end, right in front of my mother, quite sweaty, working away. And I was like, oh my God, she sits there anyway. And then I asked her what she thought, and she thought, awful. It was absolutely an affront. She hated the whole performance. And of course, my mother was very vocal about that. But it was lovely that, that she was still there
Yeah, yeah.
and yeah,
Oh,
to
that sounds
celebrate
wonderful.
with
What a
us.
lovely idea to have a, yes, part of a performance as your party. Fantastic. I must
Yeah.
act.
Part of the performance is my party, and then I did not have a table seating. And so I had, I think, I don't know, we had 10 tables. So I had like colored pieces of paper, and I had people draw colored pieces of paper and then be on a table together. And yeah, so I mixed people up.
Fantastic.
And
Yes, with that.
yeah, yeah, it was great. I have really a great, great memory of that party.
Ah, lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely. Oh well, yes. Will we do 75th birthday parties? We should do, shouldn't we? I should sort of put it on my list.
Yeah, we both did a 70th, but we're not there yet. We
No,
will do
no, oh, no,
65 to
no, we've got
72. I'm
time.
really
Yes.
curious what you did in those 5 years.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, but 60 to 65 sounds like, we were productive, creative.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, we wrote books, we initiated things or sat on boards. And yeah, I was also part of the Center for Human Emergence. We were part of the 2020 climate leadership campaign. I went to Switzerland to work with Annette Kaiser at Villa Unspunnen. Wow.
Amazing.
Wow.
Amazing. So yes, so if you're approaching 60 or even not approaching it that soon, do not think that that is the end and you're going to be
No, not
down
over the hill.
time.
Not at all. Well, maybe over the hill, but onto the mountain.
Yes. No, I think it's the time to fly, really, isn't it? Where you've
Yeah.
consolidated
Yeah.
and you've got so much experience and wisdom, and the last thing you want to do is just sort of waste it all and let it dissipate.
Yeah.
It's a
But
great,
of course, I mean, our lives are different from people who've had, full-time jobs and
of
and
course,
been in
yeah,
an office or a hospital or, a place kind of, and because I also see people then with us at 65, but like doctor friends who are finally released from, their
yeah,
hospital that was,
yes,
yeah, one of my friends, it was like going to prison every day. And there was a full program and you had not much influence on the program. And so they come out and go, wow, now I can do all these other things.
yes,
So in
yeah.
that sense, we do have a different life.
Different for different lives. But I mean, I still think, don't think that, retirement age, whether it's 60 or 65, is a time to stop and wind down, unless that's desperately what you want to do and you just want to
Yeah.
relax and have fun.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely, of course, wonderful. But you've got
But
so much.
there's so much to do. And there's so much to do work-wise. There's so much to do experience-wise. And there's so much to do, like also in volunteering.
Yeah, absolutely. So many people who need your help could do with your wisdom and
Our wisdom,
our
Lucy,
wisdom.
our wisdom. Well, it was lovely to hear.
Yes. Oh well, that was a nice uplifting conversation.
Yes.
I hope we've uplifted you as well.
Yes. 60 to 65. Go for it.
A good time. See you next time.
Okay. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.